And there is Jen and Matt McCabe at 12:14 and 51 seconds, crossing right in front of the Canton Library.
Jen!
And there's our officer, John O'Keefe, holding that glass. The last time we have visual confirmation that he's alive, one or more of these 10 people has to be the killer of John O'Keefe. That's how easy this is.
Is 22 seconds long enough to have a conversation?
No.
A human being can't have a conversation in 22 seconds?
Sure they could. I don't think it's anything of substance.
You then changed your testimony and said you were in an intimate situation, I'll put it that way, with Nicole at the time. And that's how you butt dialed Brian Higgins.
Go this way, go this way.
We finally have conclusive visual evidence about the route that Karen Reed took to 34 Fairview, and thanks to the beautiful Corey Hopkins, we can definitively say John O'Keefe did not arrive at 34 Fairview until 12:34 and 34 seconds. First, we're going to look at the Waterfall video, specifically the outside camera that has a Adobe flag placed in front of it right after we watch what appears to be either a wolverine or a raccoon running underneath the car. We are going to see Jen McCabe exit, and then finally John O'Keefe and Karen Reed. Let's watch. And there's our precious angel now, Jen McCabe, exiting the Waterfall at 12:10 a.m. And there's our officer, John O'Keefe, holding that glass. The last time we have visual confirmation that he's alive on any of the videos in our possession. Let's keep watching. This is the video recording from the Canton Library, which is located about a minute from the Waterfall bar. At the intersection where the camera is, the quickest route to 34 Fairview is to make a left. But Karen and John are going to head straight, taking a much longer route. And this is what the view would look like during the day. The video not only has a timestamp, we can see the traffic light in the opposite direction. Here it's green, so the people going from right to left would technically have a red traffic light.
Ms. McCabe, we've talked in some detail about your calls with John O'Keefe on the morning of January 29th. There was a call at 12:14 a.m. That was a call that you indicated was answered. You had a conversation with Mr. O'Keefe.
So John sent to me where to.
We know for sure in response to John's text at 12:14, Hen McCabe called him while she was driving with Matt McCabe to 34 Fairview.
At 12:14.
Just started giving him directions, and I actually think Matt spoke over me and was saying, go this way, go this way. I said, yeah, you just go down to Fairview, it's at the bottom.
At 12:14 and 36 seconds, while Hen McCabe was driving to 34 Fairview, she spoke with John for 44 seconds. And there is Jen and Matt McCabe at 12:14 and 51 seconds, crossing right in front of the Canton Library. And there's Karen's SUV crossing in front of the library at 12:16 a.m. And instead of making a left turn, they went straight.
Regarding the Canton Library video, this court should know we still do not have relevant time periods From the Commonwealth's evidence, we know that my client drove by the Canton Library at 12:16 a.m. on January 29th because that was recorded. There is video of her driving by at that time, heading to 34 Fairview, which is where John O'Keefe died.
There was a call at 12:18 and 47 seconds. That call also was answered by you. John O'Keefe made that phone call, correct?
Correct.
Now, at some point after your arrival, who, if anyone else that you were familiar with, came by the house?
I believe it was Jen and Matt McCabe.
You know about how long it was after you arrived that they arrived?
No, I don't know. I don't think it was much longer. People started, flowed in at that point.
Prior to sending John a text message at 12:20, "Where are you?" Brian remembers Jen being on the phone with John and giving him directions to the home.
Then at 12:18 and 47 seconds, just 20 seconds after Hen McCabe's phone arrives at 34 Fairview, she speaks with John for 36 seconds.
He actually called back a second time. I instructed him that it was by a friend's house, his niece and my daughter's friend. And I said, it's right, go past Bella's street.
And the records from both phones, Ozzy, indicate that at 12:18 and 47 seconds, they spoke for 36 seconds. That's critical because we know Brian Higgins is most likely waiting for John O'Keefe to arrive. He now has an opportunity to actually hear Hen McCabe because she had arrived at the house just 20 seconds before that phone call took place.
Brian remembers Jen being on the phone with John and giving him directions to the home.
And at 12:18 and 25 seconds, not 3 minutes earlier, 3 minutes later, Ozzy, at that very exact time, we know that the defense's expert, along with the data, indicates that Hen McCabe's car had arrived at 34 Fairview, giving her about 20 to 30 seconds before John calls her, and then perhaps Higgy Bear hears it.
What time did the location data indicate that John O'Keefe's phone arrived at 34 Fairview on January 29th of 2022?
First one right to the driveway was at 12:24 and 28 seconds.
12:24 and 28.
Correct.
That's Karen's expert in the first trial, confirming that the data on the phone indicates Karen and John arrived at 12:24 and 28 seconds. The expert witness for the prosecution, Sir Ian Whiffen,
I didn't get a degree. I'm from the UK.
claims it was 12:24 and 34 seconds, just a few seconds off. However, there was some controversy initially as to whether John and Karen arrived before that time. It's simply not true. And here, this is what Ozzy and a lot of people didn't understand initially. When you have steps, if Apple determines them to be steps from you actually walking, there will be a corresponding database entry for the distance. Let's find out if the steps taken before John and Karen arrived at 34 Fairview were actually recorded in a distance format. The time frame in question is between 12:21 and 12:24. During that time, we have 80 steps and 3 flights climbed. Remember, initially, everyone was told that little Colin Albert and someone else beat up John in the basement and then left them for dead. However, John's phone simply didn't register any flight changes during the time for which he was actually at 34 Fairview. But when we saw this 80 steps and 3 flights, we thought, okay, that would apply to our original theory. And we see here between 12:21 and 12:24, John takes 80 steps. And between 12:22 and 12:24, 3 flights are climbed. These are the entries from John O'Keefe's Apple Health data with regard to the distance traveled based upon his iPhone. If you look here at 12:11, it says he traveled 99.6 meters. Then at 12:31 and 56 seconds, it claims that he went 25.46 meters. If you notice, there is no entry for the time frame between 12:21 and 12:24 when his phone registered 80 steps. That's critical because Apple will not make a distance entry if it determines that it most likely is not actual steps. They'll register the steps and keep that in the database, but if they determine based upon the GPS data that you're moving too fast, it will not give you a distance traveled, and that's what we don't have here. Now let's compare this to the data from Jen McCabe's phone. She had both an iPhone and an Apple Watch on her, so we're going to get actually better data, but check out what happens here. At 12:18 and 50 seconds, just 30 seconds after her phone indicates she arrived at 34 Fairview, Jen McCabe takes 49 steps. We know that she exits the vehicle and then moves towards the house. This is very critical data. We know she parked in the driveway and then had to get out of her vehicle and walk into the house. That took 49 steps. Some of those steps could be from when she was inside. But more important, Higgy Bear told Yuri and Proctor, which they documented in their report, that he heard Jen McCabe telling John O'Keefe how to get to the house. And we know during this particular time at 12:18 and 50 seconds, she's on the phone with John O'Keefe telling him how to get to the house. And just 2 minutes later, Higgy Bear sends that text, "You coming here?"
Yes, I said, "Are you coming here?" followed by 3 question marks.
And because Jen took those 49 steps, it's very likely she's in the house, Higgy Bear's there, and he overhears Jen telling John O'Keefe how to get there. And the data from Jen's watch and iPhone, which are synced, indicates that every time she took steps, Apple registered meters traveled. Compare this to John's phone between 12:21 and 12:24 with those 80 steps and 3 flights. Apple did not enter any distance traveled. That's very important. As we see here, as Jen was walking at 12:18 and 50 seconds, Apple did provide an entry of 34.1 meters traveled. There was also a huge misconception about the time, and the expert for the defense tried to indicate that perhaps all the clocks were 3 minutes off. That's simply not true. The GPS data, which gives the exact time and location and can estimate the approximate miles per hour being traveled, is very precise, and it's very precise at this time. Between 12:19 and 12:21 and 58 seconds, we can pinpoint exactly where John O'Keefe's phone is and the approximate miles per hour being traveled. And here you can see it plotted along the street. And each hour is a moment in time which follows exactly along the route they took to 34 Fairview from the Waterfall. And now, because we have visual confirmation of exactly where Karen was at 12:16, the Canton Library, we can plot that exact route for which she took. And it matches up exactly with the GPS coordinates on John O'Keefe's phone. There was no issue with regard to 3 minutes. It is now clear John could not have been in that house ascending 3 flights of stairs, nor could he have been taking any steps within that time frame, because simply he was in the car. It's an 8-minute ride from the Canton Library to 34 Fairview using the exact route Karen took, and that does not take into account for any 3-point turn or U-turns that she may have made, putting the arrival time at 12:24, exactly what the GPS data indicates. And we just don't have one data point. Using this system at 12:22 and 14 seconds, we could see exactly where John O'Keefe is, and he's nowhere near 34 Fairview yet. John O'Keefe's Apple Health data indicates 3 flights climbed between the time of 12:22 and 12:24 and 37 seconds. This was critical initially because everybody thought John O'Keefe was being dragged up or down at the house at 34 Fairview. We spoke with an actual programmer at Apple, and she explained to us that the Apple iPhone will only register elevation increases. That means when you go downstairs, it won't register that as a flight. That means the iPhone will only register flights when the elevation increases approximately 10 feet. And she confirmed that the iPhone can register flights while you're in a moving vehicle if the elevation increases approximately 10 feet.
Yes, I said, "Are you coming here?" with 3 followed by 3 question marks.
At 12:20 minutes after threatening John O'Keefe at the Waterfall, Higgy Bear sent this text.
What time did the location data indicate that John O'Keefe's phone arrived at 34 Fairview on January 29th?
12:24 and 28 seconds.
And 4 minutes later at 12:24, John O'Keefe and Karen Reed arrive at 34 Fairview.
I think I said here, question mark. So this one is from myself to John, and it says here at 12:27.
Then there's the 12:29 and 44-second call that you indicated was not answered from you to him.
Correct. I sent to John, pull behind me at 12:31. Then I went back, kind of sat at the table, just either threw my phone probably in my back pocket.
There it is again.
There was a 12:41 call from you to John O'Keefe.
Correct.
There was a 12:41 and 54-second call from you to him.
Correct. Jen to John, where are you? And that was at 12:42.
As the records established, there's a pattern of Jen texting and calling John O'Keefe, wondering where he is.
There was a 12:43 and 19-second call from you to him.
Correct. Myself to John, hello, at 12:45.
12:46 a.m. and 16 seconds from you to him. 12:47 and 52 seconds from you to him.
Correct.
And 12:50 and 37 seconds from you to him, correct?
Correct.
You saw in his extraction report, all of those calls after 12:18 were missed calls. In other words, the only two calls that were answered were the 12:14 and 12:18. Everything else was a missed call.
I believe so. I would have to refer to it again because I've seen so many reports.
According to the extraction reports that you've seen this morning, comparing yours to his, every single one of those calls was deleted off your phone, according to the reports.
According to that report, yes.
Have you ever misplaced your phone?
Yes.
What's one of the first things you do if you're with your daughter or your husband or a friend in your house and you misplace your phone?
Oh, I'll ask them to call my phone.
Even over and over and over.
Correct.
Could be as many as 5, 6, 7 times.
Usually I hear it the first or second time.
In season 1, Karen Reed's attorneys failed to recognize Higgins threatening John O'Keefe at the Waterfall on video just 25 minutes before he was killed. This led to over 3 days of questioning of Jen McCabe, believing that somehow she was calling him because she was involved in the murder. Here, Alan's implying that John's phone was somehow separated from his body and she was making these calls in order for the other people to locate the phone.
Looking for a buzz or a ring, isn't that right?
Correct.
And you might do that if you're searching for a missing phone, correct?
Correct.
With regard to the calls that were deleted from your phone, you were asked about this under oath at another proceeding, weren't you? And you claimed at another proceeding that you had an explanation for all these missed calls.
Can I see the report?
I'm asking you about your prior testimony.
Yes, I'm asking, can I see it, please?
I'm asking you a different question. At this other proceeding, which you were under oath, you explained these missed calls, incessant missed calls. What were they? You used a word. Matter of fact, 2 words.
I believe I used the word butt dials.
You claimed that every one of these calls was a butt dial.
Yes.
So according to you, you literally butt dial John O'Keefe's phone 6 times in the span of 19 minutes.
I don't remember making any of those calls, so my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket, and that was it.
And there's that connection to Jen's unsolicited offering of her phone was put in her back pocket. For some reason, she's lying about making those calls. However, is she lying because it's nefarious, or was she just trying to cover up any connection to John on that morning?
When you dial someone by mistake, the phone has to be open. You'll agree with that, right? It takes several iterations of movement to get a phone open. Face ID or password, right?
Correct.
What happens with the call?
I assume it goes to voicemail?
Good assumption, because that's exactly what it does, isn't it? You've had a phone for a lot of years, right?
Yes.
It rings and rings and rings until it goes to voicemail.
Correct.
I generally don't believe in butt dials, and the order of the calls and the text messages make it very clear these were not inadvertent calls. However, the most important part is what Alan is bringing up here, that if it was a butt dial, the call would actually go to voicemail. It wouldn't hang up, and we know that all these calls didn't go to voicemail.
So in order to hang up that butt dial, you have to interact with that phone yet again, don't you?
Yes.
So if you had 6 butt dials, you'd not only have to interact with the phone once to butt dial John, you'd then have to interact with it every single time to turn off that phone ringer so it doesn't go to voicemail, wouldn't you?
I suppose.
That is one great ass.
Which makes 14 interfaces with that phone over the course of 19 minutes. Is that right?
I mean, I guess I don't have it all right in front of me, but there were also text messages I was sending, so again, maybe I said, oh shoot, I called him, and then I turned it off.
But your claim is you don't remember those incessant butt dials and those incessant hang-ups at all, correct?
I honestly don't.
When human apes use the word honestly, it's generally an indicator of deception or that they're embarrassed about something. Here, it's not clear why Jen is lying about the origin of those calls.
I honestly don't.
You'll agree that the phone extraction shows that John O'Keefe got no voicemails.
I didn't look, but...
So that means you would have had to interact with that phone 14 times over the course of 19 minutes at the exact time frame that the Commonwealth suggests John O'Keefe lost his life.
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask that differently, and this will be your last question for today, please.
The period between 1229 and 1250, which is the exact period that you were, quote, butt dialing John multiple times, that's also the exact period that John O'Keefe was rendered incapacitated.
Objection.
That's sustained.
Sir, did you make any phone calls after you went to bed between the hours of 1:45 a.m. and 6:30 a.m.?
Yes.
Who did you call?
Brian Higgins.
I inadvertently called Brian Higgins.
This is Brian Albert, the homeowner of 34 Fairview. It's most likely on that very morning he helped Brian Higgins dispose of the body and then eventually planted it near the flagpole.
Inadvertently called back.
What time?
I don't recall the exact time. After 2.
2:22 and 35 seconds. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Did you speak to Brian Higgins at any point between 1:45 a.m. and 6:30 a.m.?
No.
You say you inadvertently called him at 2:22 in the morning.
Yes.
How did you inadvertently call him?
Well, I don't know because it was inadvertent.
Inadvertently called back.
So I have to explain that.
Well, it's kind of like a butt dial.
And yet we have another amazing ass in Canton.
That you were, quote, hanging out with your wife, and you must have butt dialed Mr. Higgins, correct?
Yes.
You were asked how that could have happened. And in that hearing, you said, quote, I'm not totally sure. You then changed your testimony and said you were in an intimate situation, I'll put it that way, with Nicole at the time. And that's how you butt dialed Brian Higgins, correct?
I don't believe I said that's how I butt dialed Brian Higgins.
What you said was you were in an intimate situation with Nicole at the time that the butt dial occurred.
I'm not sure if you have something you can read me or show me.
Isn't it true that at the other hearing you indicated that at or around the 2:22 time frame, you and your wife were in bed together in an intimate situation?
Yes, around that time I think it reads.
Call records from January 29th at 2:22 and 35 seconds in the morning. Whose number ends in 5421?
Brian Higgins.
According to this, it's Brian Higgins.
Brian Higgins.
The call at 2:22 and 35 seconds appears to be 1 second in length, and that's from you to him, correct?
It says 1 second.
That would be the call, the initial call from you to him, the one that you claim is a butt dial. Is that right?
Yes.
Did that call roll to voicemail and then you immediately hung up?
No, I don't recall if it. I don't know.
So according to you, it was a butt dial that went to his phone that somehow lasted 1 second.
Right.
At 2:22 in the morning, one of only 10 people that had the opportunity to kill John O'Keefe called the other person who had the opportunity to kill John O'Keefe, and now he's claiming it's a bang dial.
There's a second call at 2:22 and 52 seconds, 17 seconds later. That call is actually from Brian Higgins to you, isn't it?
Yes.
And that call doesn't last 1 second. That call lasts 22 seconds, correct?
Yes.
Obviously, you know how long 22 seconds is.
What's that?
You know how long 22 seconds lasts.
According to my ex-wife, 20 seconds longer than me.
Yes.
You acknowledge that there's a 22-second phone call.
That's what's reflected by the record.
And 22 seconds is quite an amount of time. Would you agree?
It's 22 seconds.
If we were to count off 22 seconds, that's an uncomfortably long time, is it not?
No.
It's long enough to have a conversation, isn't it?
I didn't have a conversation.
Is 22 seconds long enough to have a conversation?
No.
A human being can't have a conversation in 22 seconds?
Sure they could. I don't think it's anything of substance.
Thank God Higgy Bear was not properly prepared by an attorney. He's giving his cute answers, which we know are going to annoy not only the jury, but everyone else around him. Now we see why. Brian Albert had to call Brian Higgins after everyone left. He needed help figuring out what the hell to do with John's body.
So according to your phone records, you placed a call to him, and then 17 seconds later, he returned a call to you that lasted 22 seconds.
That's what the records reflect, yes.
Did you tell anyone in law enforcement that next day that oddly Brian Higgins was calling you at 2:22 a.m. and you missed a call?
No, I wasn't aware of that call.
Did you get a voicemail from Brian Higgins?
No. That next morning, while everything was going on, I mentioned to Brian that I may have butt dialed you last night. Sorry about that.
Hey, Brian, you know the cop that you were in love with his girlfriend and trying to sneak with her behind his back and he was found dead on my front lawn? Forget about that. I'm sorry, I may have butt dialed you last night.
You did not make or receive any calls after returning home that night?
No.
All right, so you testified that the first call you received after returning home on the 29th was a call from Chief Berkowitz just before 7 a.m., which woke you up.
It was around 6:30-ish, I think.
Okay. Your testimony previously was at some point before 7 a.m.
When human apes are stressed, the brain will send extra energy to their limbs, their fingers, their feet, their toes, in order to get ready to fight, flight, or freeze. Here, when you cannot do any of those, your body will actually mask that extra energy in grooming techniques, and we're seeing it right here with old Higgy Bear.
That call was the one that woke you up?
Yes.
Brian Albert called you at 2:22 and 35 seconds, but it looks like you missed the call.
I see the 1 second call, yes.
There's a second call just below that. On the same date at 2:22 and 52 seconds, from you to Brian Albert, and the duration of that call is 22 seconds. So 17 seconds after you missed a call from Brian Albert, you called him back, and there was a call lasting 22 seconds.
That's what the records say.
So the fact is, you were speaking to Brian Albert in the middle of the night, approximately 3 hours before Mr. O'Keefe's body was found in his yard.
No, that's not correct.
Did you, in fact, tell the truth at the prior proceeding when you said, I don't remember that phone call?
I always tell the truth.
Did you lie under oath, sir?
No, I did not.
Would you tell us if you did?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You had an explanation for what that 22-second call may have been and what the prior call may have been. What was your explanation?
It better not be another butt dial.
Well, I used a phrase that people commonly used as a butt dial.
So you think it's possible that you may have butt dialed Brian Albert for a 22-second call that you're not aware of?
I think it's possible that he could have been inadvertently called back, but I have no recollection of that, nor did I have any conversation with anybody.
And you had your ringer on because you were awakened the next morning by a call from Chief Berkowitz, right?
That's a great point by Alan. Higgy Bear testified that he was awoken by a telephone call from Chief Berkowitz at 6:30 in the morning. That would mean that his ringer was on. When Brian Albert called him at 2:22 and he missed the call, he then called back to figure out what the hell they're going to do with John's body, which was laying somewhere at 34 Fairview.
Right?
Yes, the ringer was on.
To the question, did you call him back? Your answer was yes.
I think it was kind of I must have.
Higgy Bear's looking at the transcript with regard to the federal investigation where he generally tells the truth.
Did you call him back?
What's the answer?
Yes. I did not have a conversation with anybody.
And the question following that was, you just listened to the phone, what someone was telling you? Answer, it's possible that the phone picked up on the other end and nobody said anything. And then I terminated the call.
Can I see it?
And your answer was, it's possible that the phone picked up on the other end and nobody said anything. And then I terminated the call.
Meaning it's possible it could have happened.
Possible it could have happened that you had a 22-second call with Brian Albert,
I
correct?
did not have a 22-second call with Brian Albert. There was no conversation.
Mr. Higgins, what was so important that you and Brian Albert needed to discuss something at 2:22 in the morning?
Ooh, I know. Brian Higgins, in a drunken, jealous rage, knocked out John O'Keefe and then incapacitated him, and they had to store the body on the side of the house. In the meantime, they had to wait for everyone to leave. Once everyone left, Brian Albert had to call Brian Higgins, and those two dopes had to figure out how to get that body to the flagpole.
There was no discussion. I never talked to Brian Albert.
Then why the 22-second phone call, sir?
As I just said, the call was imperative in order for those two dopes to figure out what to do with John's body. It is amazing to me that our federal dollars are still paying Higgy Bear's salary because he's still employed with the ATF. Coincidentally, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins tried to dispose of their phones or change their phone carrier just a day before they were ordered to preserve them. It is very cute watching these two dopes trying to get away with murder, but we are not going to stop producing this video until the real killer,
Brian Higgins,
is brought to justice. This crime was very simple to solve because it took place within a very small area over a very short period of time with a very limited amount of suspects. One or more of these 10 people has to be the killer of John O'Keefe. That's how easy this is. Once you remove the kids and the McCabe's, you're down to just 3 suspects: Brian Albert, Higgy Bear, and Chloe. Since Chloe's a good dog, she didn't do it.
I didn't do it. I'm a good dog. I didn't do it.
So that leaves just 2 suspects, Brian Albert and Higgy Bear. But of the 2 Brians, only one had the means, motive, and opportunity to kill John O'Keefe. And that's our old cuddly but violent Higgy Bear. Once we had all the facts and didn't jump to conclusions, do you see how easy it was to solve this crime?
Around our house, we call you Sexy Stud English God.